Hi, I'm Deborah from Fish Museum and Circus, and in this video we're going to make polka dot pencil holders. Here are the things we're going to need. First, we're going to need 3mm thick felt. And regular felt, or felt that you may have used before, is generally 1mm thick. This is 3mm felt, which has a really nice body to it, and it gives your project a lot more structure and stability. Then we're going to need these extra small felt balls. And these are in lots of different colors, and you can get these in whatever color you like. And there are also a number of colors available in the 3mm felt. So depending on how you would like your pencil holder to look, you can choose whatever colors you like. Then we're going to need needle and thread, and some nice sharp scissors. So the last thing you're going to need is some kind of lid, either metal or plastic, from some container that you're not using anymore, that you were planning to recycle. And the size of this lid is going to determine the diameter of your container. So for example, in this container, I've used this plastic lid, which is a little bit bigger. And what's nice about this is going to be the template for your bottom, and it gives your container a little bit more structure and a protection for the bottom, depending on what you want to put in there. If you're going to put pencils or markers, it protects the bottom a little bit. Now in this holder, I have put in a little jar full of water so that we could put flowers in there. And the lid that I've used on the bottom is this plastic lid, which is about 3.5 inches in diameter, so that it's going to be a little smaller. And this one is a little bit higher than the other one too, and that's also a matter of preference and how you want it to look and what you want it to hold. So let's get started. I have my lid and a piece of felt that I've kind of roughly cut out the size of the lid. And now I'm going to take my scissors and cut around the lid. And you can trace around the lid if you like, if that makes it a little bit easier. I tend to just hold it and cut around it. And you want to make sure that your felt is at least as big as your lid, even just slightly bigger. You want to make sure that your felt is not smaller than the lid, otherwise your lid won't fit into the container after. So now we have to decide how big we need the piece that's going to go around the outside. And we're going to measure around the outside, the circumference of the circle, to find that measurement, and then decide how high we want it to be. Now, you could measure the radius or the diameter and do the math, but I find it actually easier just to use a tape measure. Now, because of the thickness of the felt, I can stand up my tape measure right around the outside, measure the outside, and this is a 9¼ inch circumference. And I can see that right here from where it matches up. And I'm going to write that down, 9¼ inch. So that is going to be one direction on the piece that I'm going to cut out. Then we have to decide how tall we want it to be. And that will just depend on what you're going to put in it. If you have a smaller bottom like this, you want to make sure it's not too tall so that it doesn't fall over. And my other ones are 5.5 and 4.5. So maybe we'll make this one 5 inches high, right in the middle of those two, and see how that goes. So now it's going to be by 5 inches, and that is going to be in this direction. So we're going to have a rectangle that is 9¼ by 5 inches high. So I've now cut out my piece of felt that's going to go around the outside. I used a rotary cutter and mat and a gridded ruler, but you can definitely use a pair of scissors if you prefer, or if you don't have a rotary cutter. And I'm just going to make sure that this is going to fit the way it's supposed to. Just like that. Okay. So now let's get sewing. The first part that we're going to sew is these two short ends together. And I'm going to use a clip because these are going to be butt sewn together like this. There's no overlap, there's no seam allowance, which is why we could use the measurement of the circumference and we didn't have to add anything else. We can just butt these together and we're going to sew them. So, what's so nice about thick felt is that you can hide the notch and the inside of the stitches right inside the felt. So I'm going to go right here and I'm going to put the knot right in that thickness. And so the knot is going to be right inside there. And I'm going to go straight across. And I'm actually, because this is the beginning, I'm going to make just 2 stitches right on top of each other. Just to make it a little bit stronger. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in the original hole and I'm going to go at an angle. And I'm not coming through the inside. I'm going through right into the thickness of the felt. And then I'm coming up for the next stitch. And I'm going to go straight across. And I'm going to go diagonally inside the thickness of the felt to make the next stitch. This can be a little bit tricky to hold, so that's why I'm putting my finger inside here. But you could also use some pins or some other kinds of clips if you prefer. So now that I'm at the end, I'm going to take a few more stitches, and you can see that what has happened is something has shifted while I've been sewing, and now I have a part here that they didn't match up at the end. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to tie this off. And I'm going to actually put the thread in the thickness of the felt and then trim it. And I'm going to see how my edges match up here and how they match up there. So it looks like if I trim off here, let's see what happens. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's check the fit again. Things may have moved depending on how I sewed it. So let's just see what happens. And what I'm going to do is just put some pins from the side through the bottom so that we can just keep it in place for the time being. Okay, so it might be slightly big, the bottom, but we're going to try this out and see what happens. So let's start sewing this. I'm going to once again put my knot in the thickness of the felt. And we're going to tuck that right in there. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the side, is I'm going to go across and then at an angle into the thickness of the felt, not all the way through. So there's not going to be any stitches shown on the inside. So now I've come all the way around the bottom of the container here, and I'm going to knot the thread off. And I'm going to hide the thread in the thickness of the felt and just trim it off here. Okay, and now I'm going to check the fit of this lid. So because we used it as the pattern, it fits really nice in the bottom and just makes this a little more sturdy and protects the inside of the bottom, depending on what we're going to put in there. So now this is the fun part. We get to put on our polka dots. And I like to randomly put them on, just like I did in these other containers. You can mark them, you can measure and make sure that everything is perfectly lined up if you want, but I like to just be random about it. So I'm going to start my knot inside the thickness, just like we've done before. And I'm still going to be using the thickness of the felt to hide the thread. See, there's nothing, there are no stitches on the inside. And I'm going to do the same thing when I put on the polka dots. So I'm coming up here and I'm going to take one of these felt balls and I'm just going to make a little stitch Then I'm going to go back into the container and again, inside the thickness of the felt, I'm going to randomly come up someplace. I'd say maybe that's an inch away, but you can really have them as close as you want or as far away as you want. And then I'm going to take another one, make another stitch. And do this again. And you can see there's no thread on the inside to get caught on anything. Now I'm almost at the end of this length of thread, so I'm actually going to knot it off right here where I'm going to put the next little felt ball, so it will be hidden under there. And again, hiding the thread in the thickness of the felt, and then trimming it off. I'm going to start this new thread right here where I ended the other one. And I don't tend to use a thimble. It's not something that I do, but you are certainly welcome to do that if you find it easier to use a thimble to push the needle through. Okay, now that I have put on all my polka dots, I'm going to push the needle through towards the bottom and use this little seam that we made along the bottom for the knot. So that we can hide this right on the bottom or into the thickness of the felt. So I've used about 45 of the felt balls on this size piece. So you may just want to kind of figure that out a little bit before you start so that you don't run out before you finish the pattern, or even just the randomness that you want and end up with a big empty space. So let's put our lid right into there. And we have our pencil holder, for lack of a better word, because of course you can put anything you want right inside.